Alright, Simon here, and prepare yourselves. This little Star Wars prop right here, this portable lie detector for a fan film, it took me an entire year to build. Today, I'm cracking open that epic year-long journey from the first concept sketch to the final wiring, paint and battle scars. Trust me, it was a test of patience and ingenuity squeezed into every spare moment I had. It really was a labour of love, and what you're about to see is the culmination of all that effort. Every headache, every breakthrough, all rolled into one. This long journey actually began way back when I was asked to build an interrogator droid for a Star Wars fan film. You can actually check out the full video here on my channel. The film itself is set after Return of the Jedi, and it plunges us straight into an intense interrogation scene. Our focus is on the New Republic's female protagonist who's questioning an ex-Imperial prisoner. A seriously menacing interrogating droid hovers nearby, aiding the process. And central to her methods is a portable lie detector device that she operates. This device needs various controls and meters, but crucially, a highly visible pair of red and green indicators that clearly illuminate based on whether the captive is telling the truth or not. So in my spare time during March 2024, I dove headfirst into the research and design. Given the brief for this prop, my first move was straight to my Star Wars Visual Dictionaries. Now, put aside any questionable story choices for a second, the work of the art, costume and prop departments across any of the Star Wars projects is simply phenomenal. And these books are an absolute masterclass, showcasing the insane talent and meticulous detail those teams pour into every single object. I scoured the pages, searching for props that fit the bill. A portable device like a military field radio, ideally with a carrying strap. Most importantly, it had to sit clearly in that interrogation scene, its purpose instantly obvious to the viewer from the moment it appeared on screen. So I started sketching, and pretty quickly this basic design just clicked. My idea was to build the main body of this thing out of MDF, then add all the intricate details like the indicators, switches and inserts with 3D printing. I packed it with features: 2 giant indicator lights, a couple of animated bar graphs, a block of classic original trilogy style switches, plus a few extra dials and power switches right from the front. Right from the start, I wanted all those switches to be functional. This wasn't just for show, it would give the actress playing the protagonist a genuine way to interact with the prop, aiding her performance, and crucially, allowing the indicators to be changed easily between shots. I also planned a hidden switch on the side, operable off camera specifically to toggle those crucial red and green indicators when needed. And to make absolutely sure there was a clear link to the interrogator droid in the film, I knew it had to be paired with the same Panzer grey with those sharp yellow pinstripes. With the overall concept locked in, it was time to focus on the key components, get them 3D printed. First up were the iconic original trilogy style piano key switches. I thoroughly researched the dimensions, then went through several rounds of iteration in Blender. The goal was to create a small screen-accurate replica that would pivot on a steel rod, concealing a common electrical switch directly beneath it. This ensures they'd not only look the part, but be fully functional for the actress. And next, I designed and printed holders for 4x4 NeoPixel arrays. These would form the crucial true-false indicator lights sitting behind coloured perspex squares. The hanging strap and buckles were sourced directly from eBay. After many more rounds of iteration and meticulous design work, I finally had all the critical parts I needed to build the prop's body around. This included those screen-accurate working switches, the indicator lights, fibre optic bar graphs and a set of cylindrical knobs, inspired by 1970s hi-fi equipment, and designed to fit potentiometers I already had in my electronic stash. With the individual components sorted, my focus for April shifted to the main body and preparing for a massive 3D print. I initially considered building the main body from MDF, but after sketching out the basic proportions in SketchUp, I quickly realised the constant back and forth between physical cuts, routing grooves for pinstriping and designing the 3D printed details would be a recipe for unnecessary work and potential errors. So I made a key pivot. I decided to design and 3D print the entire prop in Blender. This was a huge aha moment. Suddenly the whole project felt far more streamlined and precise. I built in some hidden features to make the prop highly functional for the film set. I designed a magnetised unit that could slide out to the side, allowing the hidden switch to be operated off camera via a long cable. Both side panels were also made detachable, giving maximum access to the interior for installing all the electronics. Knowing the prop would hang on a strap, I designed interior struts within the main body to bear the weight, allowing the strap attachments to be bolted securely. For the central body itself, I decided to print it as one giant continuous piece, a choice that became feasible with a larger 3D printer like my Cobra Max, which comfortably handles models that size. I opted to print the piece on its side so that the grain of the 3D print would run lengthways around the body, giving it much more greater strength when hanging and requiring very little support material. In my experience with previous projects, every time I've tried to rush the 3D print, I always end up spending far more time on cleanup than if I'd just been patient. So with this one, I decided to do the exact opposite of what I did on my interrogator droid build. Slow down the print time as much as possible and let the machine do its work, no matter how many days it took. So I kicked off the print, and once the brim support was laid down, I applied some masking tape to really secure it to the print bed. Then, I just got on with my life. Now, this was an insanely long print. I'm sure there are 3D printing experts out there who crank this piece out in far less time, but I wasn't willing to take that gamble. But this approach worked for me. 5 days later, in early May, the part was finished. What emerged was a strong and beautifully clean print that would require minimal post-processing, and that was hugely relieving. Plus, our spare room became a tropical sauna for 5 days. With the main body complete, I carefully removed all the support material, opened up the necessary holes, and then test fitted the smaller detailed parts. The various side panels were also printed, support material removed, and very soon the body of the prop truly began to take shape. As the build progressed through June, it was finally time to get this thing prepped for paint. Next, I installed disc magnets that I'd planned for. I specifically chose ones with countersunk holes, allowing me to screw them into place for both security and depth adjustment. This would ensure a perfect fit and strong hold every time. Then came the inevitable sanding, the part nobody loves. It's coarse and rough, and it gets everywhere. Thankfully, it was significantly shorter than the work I'd had to do on the interrogator droid, just an hour outside with a mouse sander. After that, it was time for filler primer. I swear by the Motip brand, it works a treat for me, and I went a little overboard with it to cut down on the number of passes needed. For this project, I decided to try some anti-clog sanding blocks from Abraflex, and boy, was I impressed. They made the wet sanding all the parts incredibly easy. After letting the parts dry, I moved straight to grey plastic primer. This revealed the remaining 3D print lines that escaped the first pass, so it was a case of some tactical wet sanding and another round of grey primer. Things progressed quickly from there. The smaller details received a black gloss coat and the switches a white gloss. The main body got another coat of grey primer, and then it was time to spray everything with a rattlecan chrome. Then it was off to my garage workshop to apply Alclad 2 aluminium lacquer to all the small details. For the crucial protective layer, both the small details and main body received a clear coat of Alclad Aqua Gloss. This is the only clear coat I've found that can be applied to metallic paints and lacquers without dulling the metallic finish. The metallic painting finished, it was the end of June and it was time to turn to paint chipping. I got out the latex masking fluid and carefully applied it to all the raised edges that would naturally take knocks over time. Flipping the piece over, I painted streaks on the underside front edge, places that would get a lot of scraping when the object was placed on a table and pushed about. I also added a great many curved streaks to the underside to simulate the wear and tear that the prop would receive from being carried over the shoulder, swinging and rubbing against buckles and clothing. All of the body pieces were then sprayed with the same Panzer Grey, followed by a satin clear coat to match the interrogator droid. July began with an assault on the paintwork. Using light sandpaper and a wooden tongue depressor, I scratched up the surface and removed all of the masking fluid. In less than an hour, the prop went from factory fresh to a discarded post-imperial relic. Then it was time to turn to my greebly stash. I wanted some additional electronic details to break up all of the 3D printing, so I found some old bits of circuit boards and hard drive parts to layer up in the removable box on the left-hand side of the prop. I was pleased with the arrangement. The board was a perfect size, it felt like it belonged where it was, and the additional chips and hard drive lens added a small piece of colour and texture variety without distracting from the rest of the prop. Now, I always like to add as many genuine metal parts I can on these builds. I feel it helps to sell all of the other false metal on the other areas of the prop. So I found a few metal plates and brackets. I really can't remember where they came from, and found places to attach them to the body. I took advantage of the holes in the pieces to add more detail and a little physical connection by inserting some small bolts with non-standard heads. As these pieces also had holes in them, I added a few pieces of yellow-orange pinstriping tape behind them, which added a little more depth and detail. Then came the attachment to the shoulder strap. I used some carriage bolts for the attachment, reusing some metal discs from my greeblies and a small black 3D printed insert to act as washers. This solved the problem of the bolts being much smaller diameter compared to the hole in the strap's anchor plates. Then summer happened. The prop sat patiently on my kitchen counter for a number of months. So it was October that I went back to the build and spent some time applying the pinstriping to further unify the look of the prop with that of the interrogator droid. When it comes to lighting Star Wars props, exposed modern LEDs just won't cut it for me. So, taking inspiration from the 1970s and how I implemented the logic lights for my own R2-D2 build, I decided to create the bar graphs on this prop using fibre optics. This would allow me to pipe light from modern LED strips to give it a classic diffused look. This first meant cutting 70 individual pieces of fibre optic tubing, polishing each piece with a high grit sandpaper before fitting them into the 3D printed holders I created and securing them with superglue. This meant the prop was getting closer to its final look, and I sat with it for a few days on the countertop studying it. Two things came up that I wanted to change. First, the two big square indicators just didn't look right. Functionally, they worked, but they inadvertently formed a sort of robot face that was distracting. The second issue was the lack of clearance under the switches and vertical bar graph that I needed for the electronics, so I went back to Blender and made some additional parts. I solved the problem of the indicators by adding in some asymmetry, which to be honest is an essential feature on most Star Wars props, by creating a circular lens holder for the green indicator. To create more clearance to the electronics and in the process add more visual interest to the top surface of the prop, I created a large panel that lifted up the switches and the bar graph by about 5mm. Then life, other projects and Christmas 2024 got in the way, and the prop sat for a couple of months on our kitchen work surface awaiting the next phase of the build. In the new year, I finally found time to tackle the electronics, and with my solder iron ready, I got to work. The first task was to solder up some NeoPixel arrays for the indicator lights, and for the bar graphs, some LED strips. Now, because I wanted a higher density of LEDs for the bar graphs than my LED strips could offer, I decided to wire up two short strips that would double back on themselves, allowing me to fit more LEDs under the fibre optics. That done, I soldered together a small board to route power and data toward the LEDs. My best purchase in January turned out to be a new pair of automatic wire strippers. These were a game changer. Suddenly I could cleanly, easily and consistently strip wire ends. I discovered that wire ferrules made life so much easier on my interrogator droid build, so I set to work creating a massive hookup wires for the multitude of switches and potentiometers that featured on this prop. The prop was designed to be powered from either an internal battery or from an off-camera 12-volt external power supply, so I turned my attention to the removable side panel. There I installed a jack socket that would both function as an interesting greebly on the outside of the prop and, as well, allow me to hook up any 12-volt source. A quick test confirmed my Arduino Nano was working, and then it was time to start hooking up the lighting. Or it would have been. I quickly realised the reason my LED strips weren't working was that I'd overlooked the directional arrow on them, indicating which way power and data has to flow. A classic mistake, but thankfully easily fixed. Resoldering and a bit of code had my strips twinkling. Then came the addition of a power switch, wiring in the NeoPixel arrays and getting them to twinkle too. The following day, it was time to assemble the array of piano key switches. I must admit, it was really satisfying to hold the assembled block of switches and finally operate them, feeling a gratifying click every time I flipped them. These were numbered, wired in, and another test to be able to switch the prop between its truth-telling and lying states using the off-camera switch from the removable side panel. Then came the coding of the LED strips. For this, I had to write a bit of remapping code to make the two end-to-end strips light up towards the middle connection so that when laid side by side they would appear as a single continuous bar graph. After that, the potentiometers were wired in and coded to control the length of the bar graphs as well as the animation speed of all the LEDs. Then I had some fun, hooking up all of the piano key switches to change the state of the prop. This included switching between a steady and flashing mode, having the indicators sparkle or remain solid, switching the bars between white or the red-green of the main indicators, and making the bar graphs act as actual graphs or sparkle the lights randomly. The leftmost switch even toggled between automatic or potentiometer control of the bar graphs, all of which means there are plenty of options on set for the fan film. Our actress has something tangible to play with during performance, and for the rest of its life, the prop can do something cool and interactive as part of my collection. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the build, please take a second to hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing for more Star Wars builds and prop projects. Let me know in the comments, what's your favourite Star Wars hand prop? Anyways, it's time to get back to the build. Satisfied that all of the electronics were working, I then designed a series of small holders for each of the circuit boards. I experimented with printing them at a 45-degree angle. This is a fantastic tip that I picked up from the Slant 3D channel. It makes the thin walls of the holders so much sturdier than printing things flat. Total game changer for these little parts. A test confirmed every circuit board would sit nicely within each of its respective holders before combining them together in a single piece that would allow for the various wires, connectors and protrusions to play nice with each other. It was now the end of February, and I spent the final weekend of the month painstakingly fitting the circuit board into their holders, disconnecting and reconnecting and rerouting the wires to change the rat's nest of wiring into something more manageable and optimised. Much respect goes out to my fellow UK droid builders who have truly turned this into an art form. There was one moment where a screw connector on the board holding my Arduino Nano failed catastrophically. The kind of moment that makes you question everything. It meant a last-minute scramble to switch in a new one, getting every single connector hooked up to the correct terminal for a second incredibly tense time. After all the hot gluing, wire cutting and crimping of ferrules, it was then time to mount the LED strips. I designed some V-shaped channels and then laminated them with aluminium tape to guarantee that as much light as possible from the LEDs would make its way into the fibre optics. I then mounted the LED strips slightly offset from one another on the angle side of the channel to allow them to create the single dense bar of light that I'd intended. Then, cable sleeves, zip ties and hot glue were used to secure the electronics in place for the last time. Next came fitting the lid, praying that everything was secure and nothing would be disconnected, trapped, bent or broken as I squished all of the wires down. Yet another test to make sure everything worked. I attached the front switches and potentiometers and then took a huge piece of industrial Velcro to mount the electronics as securely as possible, as close to the front of the prop as possible to allow space for a battery. I designed the prop for maximum strength when carried on its strap, but in hindsight, I think I should have designed the front panel to maybe hinge open. As much access as I created myself with the detachable sides, getting all of the electronics in proved much more fiddly than I imagined. But I got there nonetheless, and know that for future projects, if I can design in that kind of access, it'll make life much easier. Like the fibre optic powered bar graphs, I wanted to make the indicator lights feel as analog as possible, so I used several layers of foam plastic packing material to diffuse the light from the near pixel arrays. The circular lens was finally mounted in the form of a glass cabochon, a leftover from the hollow projectors for my R2 build. The prop was finally assembled, and a short bit of dirt washing and weathering on the carry strap, everything was done. This was perfect timing. February the 22nd, 2025 is a special date. It was the 10th anniversary of the East Midlands Garrison, the Star Wars costuming group that opened its arms to myself and my wife Jane back in 2018. They've since become a beloved family for us, and throughout the year we meet up at various conventions and events to raise funds to the children's cancer charity painstaking. It's a wonderful way to share the things we've made, to lift people's spirits with a few moments in a galaxy far, far away while sharing each other's company and doing good. In celebration of EMG's 10 years, we held a party at a nearby sports centre. This also gave me the opportunity to show Katie, our Princess Leia, who will also be playing the part of the interrogator in the fan film, the prop in its final form. Suffice to say, it was well received. Shortly after, I headed off to vacation with a trip to Galaxy's Edge in Walt Disney World, allowing me for the first time to pilot the Millennium Falcon, badly, and spend a number of days studying the amazing work created by Imagineers, taking way too many photos and getting inspiration for future droid and prop builds. Finally, in April 2025, it was time for the finishing touches. I printed out a cheat sheet for all of the functions of the prop and mounted it to the inside of one of the removable panels. And then out to the garage to apply some dirty down spray, dirt washes, and to rough up the carrying strap to simulate wear. So here it is, after an entire year since the initial design sketch, the final prop, all ready for its fan film debut. So thanks for watching. I'll be back with another Star Wars related prop build soon, but one that didn't quite take an absolute age to complete. And before I go, I just want to say something. We have all those moments, don't we? Days where things feel heavy or you're just not quite yourself. And if you're in one of those moments right now, just know you're not the only one and that things will truly get better. The world's a better place with you in it. So take care of yourself. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.